Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Quantum Experience. I'm thrilled to be joined by Aggie Branchik. Aggie is the founder and director at what I would call the Quantum Salon, but I'm sure you're about to correct me on the pronunciation there as a
I think it's
Welshman.
fine.
Okay, cool. Aggie, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Super exciting to be here. I'm excited, especially to chat with you because we have some pretty fun exchanges on LinkedIn. So it's great to, finally do it in person.
I had written in my notes here, founder and director and LinkedIn influencer, but I
Oh,
thought I'd
yeah.
I thought I'd leave that out there. But
I
yeah,
don't know
okay.
if I would call that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's go straight into it then. So, what we usually do is just a brief introduction. So, tell us a little bit more about you and yeah, who are you?
Yeah, so I was trained as a physicist, so I spent most of my career in academia. I have a background in a field of physics called quantum optics. So yeah, most of the time I was an academic, and then 5 or so years ago I jumped over to industry. So I worked at IBM Quantum for a few years in various kinds of roles. And last year, I left IBM and I founded my little company, Quantum Salon. So, Quantum Salon is kind of like a tiny think tank and consultancy focusing on the deep tech ecosystem.
Cool. I guess I've just realized you've gone from quantum optics to optics, I guess. That's maybe strange, but
Optics in what sense?
uh, political optics, maybe
Oh, I
marketing,
see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
communications.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's interesting.
Uh,
It can
yeah.
still be quantum optics.
Oh, yeah. Have I just given you a tagline there for free?
Yeah,
I'll take the
yeah.
sentence at the end.
Yeah, I'll
Uh,
send you an in no, you send me an invoice.
yeah, cool. Yeah, so could you maybe tell us a little bit about what you're doing at the moment? That'd be good to hear.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, like I said, it's a mix between a tiny think tank and a consultancy. And I think kind of to paint the picture, I really like to sort of start with a vision. I think every company should have like a vision and a mission.
Oh,
And so the vision we have is kind of a world where technologies that are based on frontier science, they have the resources that they need in order to be able to commercialize those technologies. And so the thing that happens now is if you have science coming out of a university and being trying to turn into a technology, they have really, really long development life cycles. And so it's really hard to eventually commercialize that technology using the kind of funding models that exist right now, these like VC backed funding models, because those are very focused on products and it takes a long time to develop a product. So there's this thing called like the valley of death, which is this gap between where you have all these resources on the academia side and all these resources on the VC side. And it's really hard for companies to make this transition. And so in order to make that transition, you have to try and leverage as many of the resources that are available in the ecosystem as possible. And so that's kind of like where we sit, where, first we're trying to understand the ecosystem as best as possible, try and understand what's out there. And as I'm developing this understanding, I'm writing about that on our Substack. So it's called insights.quantum.salon. And then, as we gain that understanding, we're also working with different people in the ecosystem to try and help them operate within that ecosystem and communicate in a way that helps them leverage all of those resources. So that's kind of like the consulting side, the communication side. So it's kind of like researching things, writing about them, and also helping startups and other companies operate in the ecosystem and communicate better.
cool. Okay, great. Um, so I wanted to set up this second round of this podcast to talk to maybe people who are new in the industry,
Mhm.
and I wanted to talk to different people in the industry, mainly people who are doing different things, such as yourself. So, in terms of leadership, so could you maybe tell us about your first leadership
Mm.
position? How did it come about? And well, I guess how did it go?
Yeah, yeah. So I would say my first leadership position was back in academia still. So I was at the Perimeter Institute, where I was teaching in the master's program there. And so Perimeter so this is the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics in Waterloo. Perimeter has various graduate programs, like master's and PhD and so on, but it's not a degree granting institute. So they have all these affiliations with universities around. And so if you want to supervise graduate students, you have to become like an adjunct professor at like one of these universities. So I was an adjunct assistant professor at the University of Waterloo, which then allowed me to apply for funding to be able to get grants and supervise PhD students. So kind of my first position was in that capacity, that I built out a research program around quantum optics, and I had several PhD students and master students, postdoc, and a bunch of undergrads and so on. So yeah, I would say my first leadership position was leading those students in that group in order to, for them to graduate and produce research and, do the standard things that professors do. And yeah, how did that go? Yeah, I think it was like a really interesting experience for me, a really valuable experience. The funny thing was that at the time, I didn't really think of it as a leadership position. So it wasn't until like later when I transitioned into industry, I became a people manager and technical lead, and kind of started thinking about leadership more, formally and more explicitly. And then like looking back, it was like very clear that what I was doing back then was, absolutely a leadership position. But for whatever reason, the way that the structures were at Perimeter and the relationships with the university and so on, that it was, a bit odd. And then at the time, it didn't feel like I kind of deserved to call myself that, that I was a leader. But in hindsight, quite obviously, that's what that was. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. It's strange that it maybe wasn't that framework wasn't given to you at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think if you're like,
yeah.
no, if you're like based at a university, and you're in the department and you're a professor and everything, I think everything is like a lot more formal and you have a lot more support and everything. So I think there it's a lot more clear, but because it was this kind of strange, like, it wasn't like my main job. So my main job was teaching in the master's program. And then I kind of had this like additional job that was like a side job that was kind of tied to another institution. And so in some sense, like there wasn't that support for people like me within the institute to like kind of, I kind of had to like figure a lot of that out. So yeah, it was just, I think it was just maybe the formal frameworks for like supporting people in the position that I was in just weren't there at the time. Maybe they're there now, but at the time it was kind of new for people like me at that institute to be having those like additional responsibilities.
Yeah. Okay, that actually might be quite a valuable way to do things. Maybe you just sort of work things out, I guess. But maybe that's quite a nice segue to my next question. So, could you maybe tell us about some of the mistakes, or have you made any mistakes
No, I've been perfect. No,
yeah.
no mistakes.
And were any of those sort of quite a big learning experience for you?
Yeah, so yeah, I thought about this a lot. I think I kind of have this like big philosophical answer to this rather than like a checklist of
that's fine.
of things that people can do. But so I'll kind of like, okay, so my okay, I would say this is even like before I even gave like leadership styles like much thought, but I think I had this like inherent idea that like leadership is servant leadership. So like if you're leading a team or a group or whatever, you're there to serve the people that you're leading, right? So that was kind of like this inherent idea that I had. And so, before you're a leader, you kind of had this relationship with like your boss or your manager, and you assume that, they have the inverse relationship with you, and you're kind of like the important thing to them. And so when I got my first leadership positions, I think this happens to everyone, very quickly you realize that it's not just you and the people below you, there's people above you as well, right? And so you're not just serving the people below you, you're serving the people above you. And in fact, like you should primarily be serving the people above you because they are the ones that hired you to do something. They're the ones that are like paying you. And so if you think that the right thing to do is to like, do your job, then like primarily you should be serving the people above you. And so I think everybody kind of like goes through that. They figure out that, okay, there's this tension, I want to serve the people below me, I want to serve the people above me. And then you go and like read all the books about managing up and managing down, and try and kind of make that work. And in a perfect world, there would be like alignment between like serving the people below you and serving the people above you, but in practice, like often it's not the case. And so I was like, I think everybody tries to kind of make this work, and I was trying to like really make this work, and it was kind of going okay. And then at some stage I realized that there's actually like a third party involved, and that third party is like me,
Yeah, sure.
or yeah, whoever, right?
Yeah.
And I think and then it became very clear that when I was trying to create as much alignment as possible between like the people below me and the people above me, I was like cannibalizing resources from me without like even being conscious about that. And so when you do that, it like eventually you just like burn out, right? And so I burnt out, and it's like pretty catastrophic when that happens. And it's happened several times, so I don't really learn my lessons. But I think so I think like what you really, yeah, the mistake that I did is like not being fully aware of like those three things and managing those three things well. And the challenge is that like you don't have enough resources to serve the people below you, serve the people above you, and yourself. You just don't, right? And so it's this game of musical chairs. You're kind of like trying to figure out like, where do I put the resources at any given time? And that's just like how it is. And you just have to, I think the best that you can do is like be aware that that's how it is, and you have to figure out your way of managing that. And I think just me not being conscious of that, like that third party, and so by default like the resources kind of weren't going like every way that they were supposed to be going. I think that's kind of like been my biggest challenge in leadership. So yeah, I I guess I don't if I was ever in that position again, I'm not sure like, how I would deal with it, but at least being conscious of it, I think would be helpful. And yeah.
It's interesting because that's the first time that's come up in all the interviews that I've done. That's the first time that somebody's mentioned the managing up.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Uh, I'm not really sure why, because that's such a big aspect
Mm.
of the role. Uh, you know, unless you're at the top, which most people aren't. But yeah, that's interesting. It's quite an interesting dynamic, I guess. Uh, but yeah. So this question may be more aligned with your work at IBM, but it may be
Mm.
relevant to what you're doing at the moment. So uh, I guess a lot of the people that are hired into these positions in quantum computing companies or similar, uh, maybe they come in as quite individualistic, or they're very talented. So how do you create a culture of letting people be creative and innovative, but also keeping them in line with what the company needs?
Yeah. So I mean, I think okay, like first, I think the most important thing is like you really need good people to begin with. Um, and so like I mean good people who have like either have the skills to do like things, or they're they have the ability to pick up those skills. So
Yeah,
from a technical perspective, that's really important. But you really need people also just from like I don't know if cultural is the right word, but an attitude, like you need people to have like the right attitude, and to kind of create an environment where everybody feels that they can contribute and work well together. And so I think not every leader has the power to do this, but I think to the extent that you can, like if you have bad apples in your team, like you should really just try and like get rid of them. And it sounds harsh, but like one apple can really like poison the group. So I think just making sure that the people in the team are good, I think is like the first thing. The second thing, again, back to this idea of a vision. I think one of the things that just doesn't happen very well is like the people at the top, either they don't have a vision or they don't communicate that vision well, and they don't empower the people all, between the top and the bottom to like filter that vision down. So then, that's when people start to, okay, I think everybody really wants to like be part of something and contribute to something. So even if they're very individualistic, they have their ideas. I think, you know, the individual contributors at the bottom, they would very much love it if they could align what they're doing with like what the company is doing. The problem is that they just don't know, right? Or it's not communicated well. So I think making sure that that vision is very clearly communicated to everyone so that they can then align what they're doing with that. I think that's like the second thing that's important. And then I think the third thing is like you really just got to get out of people's way as a manager. And I think that's like something that was quite hard for me as well. Like if you have people who like are good, they know what they're doing, and they align themselves with the vision, like then you just got to make sure that they just have what they need to do what they do, and you're not in there just bugging them all the time. And the reason that's hard is because the people above you, again, like they want to know, like, is this team like doing what it's supposed to be doing? And so they want constant updates and everything. And for you to get constant updates, you have to try and get those updates from like the people on your team. And I think the way that you can minimize like the disruption of getting those updates is to try and be as much of an expert in like the technical aspects of what the team is doing as possible. Because if you understand everything, then you can kind of figure out what's going on and what the progress is without bothering people too much. While if you like don't have very good technical knowledge of what they're doing, then you spend a lot of time getting them to explain things to you and update you and everything, and so then that is a drag on their time as well. So yeah, I think that the three things are: you want good people to begin with, you want to really make sure you've communicated the vision, and then you want to get out of people's way as much as possible.
Are there any particular traits that you look for when you're interviewing somebody, whether in your current role or maybe in your previous roles? And are there any particular questions or line of questioning that you do to get close to that info?
So I think it's really hard to answer this in the abstract. I think it's so dependent on what the role is. I think in most cases though, like you're going to have people who are kind of doing the technical assessment and the non-technical assessment. And so often when I've been on the hiring side, I've been doing kind of more the culture fit people assessment. Like if I'm the manager, I want to know, is this person going to like kind of have the right attitude, work well with the team and everything. But then you would also have people on the team who are like the technical experts and things. So if you're hiring someone in error correction, there's going to be like an error correction expert on the team, and they're going to be asking more the very like specific technical questions. And then afterwards, like you kind of all get together and, you ask them for their advice. Do you think this person is good at this technical stuff? Or, somebody else goes through their GitHub repo and everything. So I was never so much doing the deep dives into the technical side. I was more doing the like, is this going to be a person going to be a good part of the team side? And there, I don't think I had, a specific set of questions. It was very much just kind of trying to have a conversation and, feel them out as a person. How do they deal with certain situations? I know technically, like when we were doing the interviews, we had this like pre-made list of, like, oh,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, whatever the like silly questions are. I never really liked those because I wasn't sure how to like really interpret the answers. And I always knew that I would do terribly at questions like that. So it was more just about having a conversation. I think in all cases, like if you're preparing for an interview, you really want to kind of get into the head of the people that are hiring you. And it's obviously hard to do that in the interview, right? You want to like kind of do that in advance. And so there's kind of like two ways of doing that. One is to try and get access to like other people who are, similar to the kind of person that's hiring you. So if someone is like a manager of an error correction team, try and see if you can speak to some managers of error correction teams in other companies and, try and get a feel for how they think. Or, do some interviews for companies that maybe like they're not your first choice of a company, but if you go through the process of being an interview, that kind of gives you a feel for that.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of one way to prepare for this kind of thing, like just try and understand like what it is that person like care, like what's important to them in the company, and what do they have to achieve, for them to be doing a good job. I think the other thing though is with this, this breakup of the technical questions and the non-technical questions. I think if you're like a really good team fit or a really good culture fit, and you might not have the right technical skills for a role, depending on what the company is, they might still be like, we really want this person and we're going to just try and see if they fit somewhere else. Can we put them somewhere else? Or maybe in 6 months' time, call them back or something. So I almost feel like, I know you just had a post recently on like not vibe hiring, but I almost feel like, when you're preparing for the interview, it's not like you're going to like suddenly learn a whole bunch of technical skills, right? So I think it's much better to just try and hit that personality side first, and like don't try and fake the technical skills. Like that'll kind of, you have a set of technical skills, you'll find a good match, but like making sure that you'll be a good part of the team and that people want to work with you, I think that's kind of like a thing you should focus on.
I guess people want to hire people who are net positives to the team and the company.
Yeah.
And I think that comes in different forms, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I totally agree. Just to point to what I know, this is not. Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
I actually had one more thing to add. Sorry, if you don't.
Yeah, please.
Were you going to change topic, or you wanted to comment on something?
I was going to comment on something, but it's
I'll
far
let you
less
comment,
interesting.
and then I'll
No,
add
it's
my
less
thing.
interesting than what you have to say. So
No,
we'll go
no,
with what you have to say.
Sorry. Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to add is like, because I know when you're like looking for a job, it's like so stressful and like you just really want to get that job, and so you're just like so focused on nailing this interview. But I think it's really important to realize that the interview is like, assuming everything goes well, the interview is like the start of your relationship with a company. And so don't just be like, oh, I care about the interview and I don't care about what's happening afterwards. So I think it's really important for you to also try and learn as much about the company as possible and decide for you whether you want to be like with them, because then you're going to have to like actually work there and be with these people and everything. And so I think the final thing that I would add is to just like really treat this as you interviewing them, not just them interviewing you, and just like really take that seriously. Don't devalue yourself and think that you deserve less. Like you want to make sure that that company is good for you as well. Yeah, that was just my final thing that I want to add.
No, I think that's great advice. So I just wanted to move on to our final question. So I wanted to hear about maybe one of your memorable or impactful leaders that you worked under, and why.
Yeah, so this is one of those questions that I'm probably going to kind of skirt around and maybe not answer in the way that it was intended. Which I mean, I think it's, yeah, and I don't mean to like devalue like any of the leaders that I've worked for or worked with, so I'm yeah, that's not really my intention. But I think that, and okay, maybe I'm like way overthinking this question, but earlier when I was talking about, you were asking about mistakes, and I was kind of painting this picture that like there's three things you need to try and kind of like nail or whatever. You've got, so you want to do things well by the people who are below you, do things well by the people who are above you, and do things well by yourself. And I don't, that for yourself thing, I don't even mean that like in a selfish way. It's more like in a like put your own like oxygen mask on before helping someone else, right? So I think when someone talks about someone being a good leader, I think they're usually talking about when they're doing one of those things really well, and it's the thing that they happen to be exposed to. So if it's someone who's like working below someone, they're like, oh, that person is being really good to me as my leader. but if you look at it holistically, maybe they're just not really doing a very good job, like for the company that they're working for, like their team's not working very well, or maybe they're just like destroying their personal life or something. And so, or you think about like good leaders, like from the outside, like so maybe they're like their team is like doing really, really well, but the people working under them are miserable. And so I feel like it's really hard to, like, I don't want to glorify anyone who's like doing really well at one of those things and sucking at the others. But I think like it's also impossible to do all of them really well. So I feel like the people that are good leaders in the sense that they try to do all three things as best as possible, they're kind of like sucking at each one of them to some extent. So they just don't look like good leaders. So and you kind of don't have insight into all of those things either. Like anyone who's like, yeah, does that make sense? And so
That's
so
what I was
it's
just
really
about to ask you.
yeah, it's really hard to like point to someone and say that person is a good leader, like holistically, like hitting all those boxes. So I don't have anyone like I know good people that are doing one of those things well, but I don't think it's good that they're not doing the other things well. So I was going to kind of like reinterpret that question and like think about, you know, how else can we think about what does it mean for someone, for me to think that someone is a good leader? And for me, that would be someone that I want to follow, right? Like someone that I want to follow either like on their mission or follow in their footsteps. And so the people that kind of stand out to me in my life are the people who I really wanted to be like, who I wanted to live my life to like become like them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of a different type of leadership than what we were talking about before. And so I have kind of like three people that I really wanted to like highlight here. So one of them was she was the head of department of the Department of Physics when I was a student at the University of Queensland. So her name is Helena Rubinstein Dunlop. She's an amazing woman, like so fierce and fiery and like, yeah, just, I don't know, a very like intelligent, powerful, incredibly stylish woman. Like she was just, you know, a force to be reckoned with. And she would, you know, you'd hear her like walking up and down the hallway and, you know, clop, clop, clop with the heels. And she like, I don't know, she was just like incredible. And definitely when I was a student, I was just like, oh my God, I really want to like become like Helena. She was, you know, a huge, huge role model. And, you know, in the end, I didn't stay in academia. She's still in academia, like being amazing. You know, I didn't live up to that, but I think in many cases I, you know, did live up to a lot of things that I really appreciate about her. Maybe not the stylish aspect, but yeah. So I mean, she's definitely been like a huge role model, and I think she's incredible. The other person is Michael Nielsen, who is, you know, he's famous in the industry for writing one of the early famous textbooks, Nielsen and Chuang. So he was a professor at the university where I was a student as well. And so he was like an incredibly supportive person, incredibly kind and incredibly kind of like, you know, understanding of the, you know, I was maybe like different to the other students there. And he was like very much supportive of me, like embracing the ways in which I was different. And then he, you know, so he left Brisbane, and then he went and joined the Permanent Institute. And then at some stage, he kind of left academia completely. And so this was like a really bold move to just, you know, give up this super fancy position at the Permanent Institute and then become an independent researcher, you know, head out to California and just kind of do your own thing. And, you know, that to me, like, I mean, okay, so in many ways, like, he was definitely a role model in this like way that I wanted to live my life, to eventually, you know, become an independent person doing things, you know, on my own terms. But also like throughout the, you know, the time he would write some, you know, lots of stuff about his thoughts about how to, you know, do things, how to live life. And so he was very like influential on me. So here's another person. And then I would say the third person is a woman called Christina Escoda. She is someone that I interviewed for one of my podcasts, and she also had this amazing career where she just, you know, jumped. She did her PhD in string theory, but then, you know, did like a crazy amount of different things, like, working, on the trading floor or something, in New York, and being a film producer and everything. And
Oh,
eventually she
wow.
also settled on this, very independent lifestyle. She's an angel investor and also an author. And so, yeah, when I interviewed her, it was like very influential for me. I was like, oh my God, this is like the kind of life that I want. So, yeah, I think people who are living life on their own terms and then being very like kind of vocal is not the right word, but like sharing their journeys, I think that can be really impactful, because then, people like me can follow them and, try and live my life in a way that's like, meaningful for me. And I've been trying to also kind of mimic that and try and share my journey with people as well. So yeah, I would say, like, a very long roundabout answer, but I think, yeah, the people who I would say are good leaders are the ones that make me want to follow in their footsteps.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you very much. Um, that brings us to the end of this episode. That was everything I thought it was going to be, Aggie, and more, I would say. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate your time. I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did, because if anybody was watching that, I was totally enthralled looking down the camera then. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, and yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.